right, greetings everybody. Welcome to the holiday call. I see a few friendly faces on here that I recognize, and I would imagine we've got people from all over the country here. So wherever you are, happy pre-holiday. Imagine this, we're just, wow, 2 weeks away from Christmas. Amazing, huh? And I trust everybody's had an absolutely phenomenal year, and 2026 is going to be your best year ever. So today we're going to be talking about questions as a tool to enhance customer experience. So one of the things that I very much remember from listening to Mr. Phil Jones, and I presume some of you know who Phil Jones is, read his book, or if you haven't, I highly encourage you, exactly what to say. But one of Phil's quotes is the worst time to think about what you're saying is in the moment you're saying it. So we're going to shift that a little bit. The worst time to think about the questions you're going to ask is in the moment you're going to ask it. So in well, first of all, let me go over some learning objectives for you. And I've got some notes here, so I'm going to be referring to my notes because I want to stay on track here. So by the end of our 30-minute session today, we're going to go through three primary things. We're going to talk about question frameworks and how top salespeople use question methodologies to help persuade people and to help build their customer experience. Imagine getting every single person you work with a level 10 on a Yelp review for you out of 10, 10 out of 10. Number two, we're going to apply comfort building strategies that will reduce client anxiety and strengthen trust. Now think about that just for a moment. We're going to reduce client anxiety. Is there any anxiety when people sell houses? Do they get a little uptight? Do they sometimes misbehave? I don't know about you guys, but that's definitely happened with me. And as a salesperson, are there trust issues? So through asking better questions, we help people reduce anxiety and build their trust in us. And we're going to walk you through why that happens and some of the ways our brain works to cause that to occur. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is we're really using all this to connect Keller Williams values. Win-win or no deal. Integrity in all things. Communication, seek first to understand. And I want you to remember that one because the art of questions and learning to ask questions is truly about seeking first to understand and how that enhances the experience. And by the way, if you have chats, I've got my chat on my screen over here that you can't see. So if you've got questions that you'd like me to address or something you want me to expand on, just put a note over here in the chat and I'll keep an eye on that. And by the way, if you notice on the chat right now, if you open it up, you've got my email address. And at the end of the 30 minutes, I've got some bonus material. So if you'd like to get the bonus material, which is going to take you a little deeper into questions, and I'll cover that a little bit later, feel free to send me an email and I'll cover that on the last slide. All right. So first and foremost, everything we do inside the Keller Williams world is we follow TCPA guidelines. I know you guys have heard this before. It can't be said enough. In today's world, there are those folks out there that don't want us to call them, and there are those people that do want us to call them. And there's actually a lot of people that are okay with us talking to them. Let's keep our conversations with those people, and the ones that don't want us to talk to them, that's okay. We're just going to follow the guidelines as it relates to auto dialers, AI, text messages. Having said that, so my name is Wally. I'm an executive coach with Keller Williams with MAPS. I've been here for a long time. I've been in real estate since the mid 80s. And in addition to real estate, I spent 14 years as a professor at Pepperdine University, where I developed the first undergraduate entrepreneurial program for that university back in the late 80s. And that's where I discovered my passion was really in development, coaching, training. And that's what I spent most of my career doing. And you can see there's a few things on there. I'm also an author. I also have a weekly blog that I put out called Monday Morning Mindset. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through. And if you want to get copies of that, you're certainly welcome to do that. It goes out to all the United States, Canada. I don't have anybody in Europe yet, but if we got anybody on the call in Europe that wants it, we can send it over there. Okay, so let's start with somebody who's a whole lot smarter than I am, Albert Einstein. And one of my favorite quotes of Einstein is, "It's not that I'm so smart, but I stay with the questions much longer." Now, here's probably one of the smartest humans that ever lived. They've done all kinds of studies. Supposedly, Einstein used more of his brain than anybody else that's ever lived. And yet, one of his famous quotes is, "I'm not that smart. I stay with the questions longer, basically, than anybody else." As salespeople, most of us spend most of our time in the presentation talking, let me share my experience, my opinion, and very little time in the questions. So here's what happens, and I want to start here. I want to start with understanding the difference between what happens when we give people information and when we ask questions. So when the brain hears a question, first of all, it's very hard for the brain to ignore that. Now think about that for just a moment. When we hear a question, our brain automatically goes into that, and it's what in the world of neuroscience they refer to as instinctive elaboration. So instinctually, when we're asked a question, our brain is beginning to look for an answer. It wants to participate. When people give us information, it creates resistance. The brain goes, does that information match the information that I have? Is that correct? It begins to value and judge. And if it doesn't like what it hears, it begins to reduce trust. And when we reduce trust, we don't want to continue to communicate. We create anxiety and we create distance. So, how many of you want angry, distant clients that don't trust you? If that's what you want, then you can take the rest of this call off and just keep doing what you're doing, and you can have more of that. If, on the other hand, I want clients that love me, like me, refer me, trust me, and think I'm the greatest thing on the planet, asking better questions will get you there. All right. So, again, when a brain hears an explanation, it judges the information, it compares it to what it really believes, it defends it, and it accepts or rejects it. And by the way, it rejects it much more than it does. Again, this is instinctual. This is how we're pre-wired. This goes into the fight or flight. This goes all the way back to in the early days of human existence. We didn't have complex problems to deal with. It was either live or die. So the other thing that happens is something called neural overload. When you ask a question, it expands neural capacity. When you give an explanation, all it does is strengthen what the person already believes, and they want to embed themselves, and we reduce their cognitive abilities. Again, none of these things are good. Okay, so why questions? Asking the right question leads to customer-based solutions. So in today's world, we have a fair amount of listings that need to have their price reduced. Yes or no? Okay. What happens when you go to a client and you have all your evidence of why they need to reduce their price? How many of them go, you know what? You're right. Thank you for providing that information. Let's go ahead and reduce my price. Versus all you're trying to do is earn a commission. Why are you against me? Why aren't you supporting me? Notice what happens when we give the information about why they should reduce the price. Well, as we go forward, we're going to talk about some questions you can ask that will actually cause them to come to the conclusion that they should reduce the price. Wouldn't that be novel? So again, what we're doing is we're doing this, as the slide says, customer-based solutions. Okay. It also uncovers the root cause of the issue. If we understand what it is that's causing them to be stuck on their price at a deeper level, might that help us get them to see why reducing their price is a more important thing to do than staying where they are now? It enhances empathy and rapport, and it improves our resolutions. In other words, they come up with a solution. And one of the things many, many years ago when I was working on this, when I was selling, and then when I was training, I would hear in my workshops, people would come back and they go, Wally, I'd called these people. I wanted to get a price reduction of 5%. I went through the process of asking better questions and providing the explanations based on their answers, and they decided to reduce the price by 10%. I was getting better price reductions from them than what I wanted to suggest to them. Why? Because it was client-based solution, not agent-based solution. And by the way, if you have any questions as we go through this, go ahead and pop them over in the chat. So use questions to understand and then provide solutions based on the questions you ask. So I want to take you through a little scenario here, and I want to read this to you because I want to make sure I get this right. Okay. So I want you to imagine for just a moment that you've gone into your doctor. So you're having a little bit of, I don't know, we're not feeling well. And in fact, it's got to the point where we're feeling pretty bad. We're starting to get a little concerned. And as we feel poorly and the pain increases, our brain starts making up all kinds. I've got this disease. I've got that problem. All right. So we go to the doctor. We check in. We're sitting in the exam room and the doctor comes in. Hi, my name's Dr. Wally. Welcome to my office today. Well, I wanted to thank you for this opportunity to meet with you. But first, let me tell you a little bit about me. I went to medical school at this medical college in this small foreign country. I've been a doctor for 30 years. I've treated thousands of patients, and let me tell you, here's what's going on right now. There's a lot of people that are getting the flu. So since you've come in today, there's a high probability you've got the flu. So here's what I want you to do. Now, how many of you would be really excited about working with that doctor? They came in, they told you about themselves, they told you how wonderful they were. Maybe they pointed out their certificates on the wall of the different things that they've done, and then they gave you the solution. In the medical world, we call that malpractice. In real estate, we call that a listing presentation or a buyer consultation. Now, think about that for a moment. If one of the professions that deals in life or death does something different than we do when they encounter a customer, maybe we should pay attention to that. So, what does the doctor do? They start asking questions. How are you feeling? Where does it hurt? How long have you felt that way? When did this begin? Here, let me poke you there. Let me poke you there. Let me look in your eye. Let me listen to your chest. Let me do this. Let me do that. Why is the doctor doing that? What is the doctor doing?
Diagnosing.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's think about that as it relates to our client. We go on a listing presentation. How much diagnosis did you do by asking the client questions? Now, we teach in bold that you should have a pre-qualification conversation, right? So if you've been through bold, you've learned about pre-quals. They're pretty good. They could go a lot deeper. Okay. Then we show up at the house and we go into presentation mode. And I'm going to suggest I want you to change that. And we want to start by asking better questions. Tell me a little bit about you. How many homes have you owned before this one? How many homes have you sold before this one? What experiences did you have? What did you like that the previous agent did or didn't do? What is it you would have liked them to have done more of? How will you know? What will the decision criteria you'll be using to pick your agent today? You see, when we ask better questions, we now can provide them answers. So here's another little thing that I learned many, many years ago. We used to go on our listing presentations with a great big thick notebook, flip charts, and so on and so forth. Well, here's what I discovered. My notebook was putting people to sleep. By the time I got to about page 4 or 5, they're like, I've heard this stuff before. So then I started doing something. I'd show up with my notebook, open it up, put it in front of them, pause, pull it back, and they would look at me like, why is this guy pulling his... I go, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? I put this presentation together not to impress you, but to impress upon you the detail that I put into just preparing for today's session. Now, we can go through this, or we could take a little bit more time and we could talk about what's most important to you. So, may I start with some questions, or would you like me to go through this full listing presentation? May I ask you some questions, or would you like me to go through this full listing presentation? You know what percentage of the people wanted to see the presentation? Here's what I discovered. The reason I was in the house was they had already eliminated all but 4 or 3 other agents in my marketplace. Now, I'm here in Southern California, where there are tens of thousands of real estate agents. And one day it just hit me. You know what? I'm at this listing presentation, and let's say there's 5,000 agents in your area, and they're going to talk to 3 people. They have already eliminated 4,997 agents. They don't even get a chance to talk to these people. They already think they know who I am. They really don't need to know a whole lot more about me. I can stalk most of you on the internet and find out all kinds of things about you.
Quick
What?
question.
Yes.
Can you say one more time what you say? You say, would you like me to go? Because I'm writing this down. I love it. I've prepared this presentation for you to let you know that I came prepared specifically for our whatever you say. Can you say that again? And then would
Yep.
you like me to
I
go
said,
over it, or
yeah,
can I ask you some questions?
yeah, perfect. So it was, I put this together not to impress you, but rather to impress upon you the detail I went into in preparing for our session today, which is the same level of preparation we put into selling your home. Now,
Yeah.
we can either go through this book, or I can start with some questions. Which would you prefer? Or you could do it the other way. We could start with some questions, or I can go through the presentation. What would you prefer?
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So number one, notice what we did. We started early on with a question. We asked them what their preference was. Guess what I just got when they told me what their preference was? That was my first yes of the day. See, I've already created an alignment. By not asking that question, we weren't necessarily in alignment. I presumed they wanted to see my presentation. That's a very dangerous place to go when you're doing presentations. Just like our friend the doctor. The doctor presumed you had the flu and gave you medicine for that. That's malpractice. So by starting with a question, we're now aligning ourselves with the client. And the first thing we do at the very beginning of the presentation is we give them what they want. Here's what the brain is doing. Oh, I kind of like this person. Wow. Huh. They wanted to know what I wanted. Wow. That's unique. All right. So one of the things that in doing these workshops in the past has come up is, okay, Wally, how do I convert statements, explanations? How do I convert a listing presentation into a series of questions? And I'm going to give you a very simple little formula. There's three simple steps, and it starts with a statement. Notice what I did. I gave them a statement. We could have X or we could have Y. They gave me a response. Now, let's say we're there to talk to them about price reduction. So we're going to start with a statement. Mr. and Mrs. Seller wanted to reach out to you. And when we put your home on the market, one of the things we talked about was we were going to be having weekly sessions. Okay, we've now been on the market for 6 weeks. And I wanted to have today as our weekly call. I wanted to talk about if we want to make any adjustments. Pause, pause, pause. Okay, so are there any adjustments that you want to make? No. Yes. Whatever. Okay, now whatever they say, we're going to rephrase that. And the way we do that, let's say like, okay, I know you're going to call me to reduce my price. I'm not reducing my price. Great. I'm glad you asked that. And there's actually a little sequence of questions that we're going to go through. So they give us a statement, or we give them a statement, and then we say, when they respond, thank you for asking, thank you for sharing that, thank you for providing that information. That's some great information. That's a great question. Okay, this could apply, for instance, will you reduce your commission? I'm sure some of you have run into that one when you've gone on a listing presentation. That's a great question. Hey, thank you for asking that. I can tell you're interested in putting the most amount of money in your pocket. Tell me more about that. I can tell you're interested in getting this home sold quickly. I can tell you're interested in getting the best real estate agent. Tell me more. So, all we're doing early on in this process is what's on your mind. So, go back to the beginning. We go on the listing presentation. Would you like me to start with questions or would you like me to go through this book? Well, let's go through some questions. Great. So, let me ask you, what's the most important thing in getting your home sold? Selection of agent, marketing, photography, open houses. What's most important to you? Great. Thank you for sharing that. I can tell you're really interested in marketing. Tell me more about that. Now, this little phrase, tell me more about that. Please elaborate. Or we can just do it with an upswing, marketing. So we put the upswing on the back end that forms it into a question. Notice what's now happening. We're now understanding their version of marketing, not our version of marketing. And here's the mistake that most salespeople go. Oh, marketing. Let me tell you about my marketing. Blah, 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 blah. Now, here's what we're doing. Notice what's happening. The brain is now comparing your explanation of marketing to their explanation of marketing. Who do you think they want to make right in that conversation? You or them? So everything you say after that is now getting discounted. So I want you to think of giving explanations similar to what happens when somebody says the word but. And I'm sure many of you have been to bold. So when we say the word but, everything before that gets eliminated. It's not important. But, okay, well, let me tell you about how wonderful my marketing is. You have just eliminated everything that's in their head about what they want in marketing, and we're now confusing them. Tell me more about that. Could you elaborate? Help me understand. Marketing. A lot of different ways of doing that. Okay, any questions so far? So we've covered a little bit of neuroscience.
I do
We've
have a question.
Go right ahead.
What if they use the word marketing, but they really only vaguely themselves know anything about it, but they know that they should ask? So they say, I'm wondering about your marketing. And then you say, marketing? Okay, well, tell me more about what you mean, or tell me more about what you're thinking about marketing.
Hmm.
Um, and then they flounder and they're like, well, I mean, I've just been told by my friends that the marketing really matters. Can you go from there? Give me an example of how you would deal with that one when they really threw out a word or a term that they knew was important in the selling process, but they didn't really know how to elaborate on it, so they couldn't tell you more. How do you save them from, feeling a fumble there, like, oh, I just know that I need more marketing, like good marketing, and that's where you would do what?
Okay. So I would go fantastic. All right.
Okay.
So let's do it a little bit differently. What result would we get that would tell you that the marketing is good?
The house sold quickly and at the price that we listed it.
Perfect. Okay. So if the house sold quickly, what's your definition of quickly?
In the first 2 weeks.
In the first 2 weeks. So if it didn't sell in the first 2 weeks, would that be the fault of marketing?
Well, I think, in my opinion, it could be. If there's
Oh,
poor marketing, it might be.
you're correct. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between poor marketing and good marketing. May I share my experience?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Now notice what's happened here. First of all, I've gotten this narrowed down and I went to the outcome. How would we know that the marketing is working? Well, if we sold my house for the price I want
Hmm.
and if we sold it quickly. Oh, tell me more about that. So I'm getting them to elaborate, even though they're struggling, I'm just going to dig a little bit deeper and starting with what the end in mind is, how will we know that this is working?
Can I do one last follow-up to that question?
Sure.
You've mentioned inflecting the down flexion, up flexion.
Right.
I know you're not teaching a class on upflecting and downflecting, but can you provide just one or two general rules for those people like me who've really never focused on that, where we should always downflect and where we always upflect?
Okay, so an upflect at the end, when we put the emphasis on the end of the word and we raise our voice a little bit at the end, that turns it into a question. Upflect,
Okay.
downflect.
So are most of the things that we're saying downflex unless we're asking questions then?
When you're giving statements to people, then if you add, well, I think what we should do is reduce the price.
Uh-huh. So you're saying with marketing, it's I can tell you're interested in marketing. Tell me more about that. So you're upflecting on tell me more about that versus I can tell
No,
you're
you
interested
did.
in
You
marketing.
actually did it. You actually did it with a downflect or a downswing at the end, which made it a statement.
Oh, when I said tell me more about that, I was still downflecting.
Yep, you sure were.
Tell me more about that.
Okay. Now, if you did that, you've now asked a double question and you've confused them. Sorry to make all this very complicated, but
No, how do you
these
say it?
are these are these are ways of practicing. You generally use this when you've got a very short thing or you're taking one word they say, like marketing,
Okay. Okay.
and marketing.
Aha.
Does
Thank
that
you.
help?
It does help.
Yeah. That would be a good thing for you to do some research on. And for all of us as speakers, as presenters, is learning how to use our voice and upswings and downswings in our voice to create context to what we're saying. Because we
Okay.
can confuse people when we do that in the wrong way. And most people have never been taught that. That would be a whole nother workshop we could do. All right.
Love it.
All right. So,
I actually, sorry, I have a quick question
sure.
about the marketing when you're kind of discussing that with the client. I'm assuming this is all after you have agreed upon a listing price, because I feel like the role play conversation you had could set you up for later on down the road in 2 weeks if it doesn't say a sell. Now it's your fault for the marketing when really it was them not budging on their price.
I wish we had a couple of hours for this workshop because that is a powerful, powerful question. I appreciate you asking that question.
Okay.
So, may I share my experience?
Yes.
Okay. See, even I can be coached on how to ask these questions. So, sorry about that. So, here's the thing. To me, pricing is not something I pick, it's something they pick. And they pick it after I've explained how all of this stuff works. and we've asked them questions. So to me, the marketing comes ahead of the pricing because pricing is part of marketing. Price is not a standalone all by itself thing. It's one of the functions of marketing. So if you think about that, and somebody's done a great job of marketing, and you walk in the store and the prices are too high, do you buy?
No.
Notice what happens when we put the wrong price on great marketing. Now, here's what's interesting. Unless we know the existence of a product, even if it's priced greatly and it's got poor marketing, it doesn't sell. So these two are intertwined. So we start with marketing and then we bring pricing into the marketing. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what would you say are the key components of marketing? Exposure, frequency, price. See, those are key components of marketing. So let's talk about exposure and frequency first. Do I have your permission to do that? See, for me, it's very normal for me to make a statement, ask a question, or ask a question and make a statement. That's the skill set I would hope all of you begin to work on. So you make a statement, ask, is that what you're looking for? Is that what you had in mind? Could you tell me more about that? Well, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. Learning to ask these questions and get them to give you more information. So based on everything I've shared, based on what's happened so far, is staying with this price what you want to continue to do? So if keeping this price caused you to stay on the market another 6 weeks, would you be okay with that? Well, no. Oh, no. Notice I did the upswing. Now they're going to tell me about the no. It's so interesting, and I love the interaction here, guys, a lot because it helps as a presenter. I got so much more content. We could spend a couple more hours on this. So what I will do is you've got my email on there. If you want all these slides, send me an email and I'll send you the slides. So this slide, I'm not ready to reduce my price. Instead of explaining, ask, would it be helpful to look together at what the market is telling us right now? When you compare your home to ones that are actually selling, what do you notice? How do you feel our current price is influencing the number of offers, influencing the number of showings? If our goal is to get you moved on a timeline, what adjustments do you think would best give us a chance to hit that timeline? See, these are all questions that are getting them to think about the process and getting us moved away from this price animal. It's now created this big monster in their head, and now we're going to outcome. These questions shift them from analysis to co-ownership of the resistance, not continuing to fight for the resistance they've got. Okay. You need to do more marketing. I'm not happy with the marketing. My house hasn't sold. They force us then to get into a question and defend ourselves about marketing. Very dangerous place to go. When you say your home needs more marketing, what specifically do you feel is missing? So another way of getting clients engaged is to go to the specifics. It's what we call chunking it down. Let's chunk that down. What are the key components? What specifically should we be looking at? Based on our activity so far, what do you think is stopping buyers from seeing your home? See, that's not about me. It's not about them. We're creating a third party or a third entity over here. What do you think's causing that to happen? Let's take a look at the photographs. Let's take a look at the explanation in the MLS. Are you in agreement that those are the best photographs? Are you in agreement that that's the best description? See, if we get them to agree on all the components of what we're doing as the real estate agent supporting them, then they're more likely when it comes to price to realize that's the last thing standing. I need to adjust the price. By mastering the art of asking great questions, you can create a path to enhance customer communications. That's really what this is all about. All right, so I have some bonus material, and I know we're a little bit over, so thank you for hanging in here. All right, so I'm finishing up a book. It's not ready for publication yet, but it is ready for you guys. Notice I used a but. So I'm going to change that. I've written a book. It's not ready for publication, and it is ready for you guys. And it's called Great Questions Equal Great Salespeople. It's about an hour and a half read, and we'll take you through the details of what we're talking about. It's got some examples. It's specifically written for the real estate industry. And if you want an advanced copy of that, i.e., a Word document version, not a EPUB or a printed version of it, all you got to do is send me the email, wallymalesh@kw.com. I also created a playbook. Did you know that there are actually roughly 16 different types of questions? Most of us are familiar with open-end, closed-end questions, leading questions, quantitative questions, Cartesian questions. This playbook will take you through 16 different types of questions and how you use them in different contexts of working with your clients. How you'd use it on a price reduction, how you'd use it in a listing presentation or a buyer consultation, or getting them to sign a contract. So 16 different types of questions playbooks. It'll give you a little more clarity and it'll give you the opportunity and some questions you can start practicing before you go on these presentations. And then the last thing, as I mentioned at the beginning, each week I put out a publication called Monday Mindset. It's about what's going on. A lot of this information comes from my coaching calls. It's interesting as a coach, what you discover is week after week, your calls become very similar. This week, right now, the topics are about finishing out the year strong and getting ready for the new year. That's a big part of what happens in December. So those are the things that I write about in the Monday Mindset. If you'd like to have that, or if you just like to schedule a session with me and go through this in a little more detail, do a one-on-one, I'm happy to do that as best I can. It'll probably be right after the first of the year. I can get a few calls in between now and Christmas holiday. So if you want more information or any of this material, the slides, the book, the playbook, just shoot me an email. Let me know what you want, and I'll be happy to provide that for you. We went 6 minutes over. Thank you so much
Wally,
for being here. I got you some,
Wally,
yes.
can you possibly repeat your email address a little slower? I'm trying to write it down.
Okay, it's my first and last name, Wally Malish at kw.com.
Malish? Okay, Malesh.
Malesh, yeah, Wally Malish
Okay,
at kw.com. Just shoot me a quick email, let me know what you want. And by the way, if you like this topic and you think this could be expanded into a bigger workshop or class, let MAPS know. I would not be opposed. In fact, I would be excited to offer an opportunity to do like a fast track class just on the art of questions. Because as you can tell, there's so much more to this where we could go a lot deeper. We could get you practice questions. So I love Phil's book, Phil Jones' book, Exactly What to Say. If I was writing my book, it would be exactly what to ask. So thank you all for being here. We greatly appreciate it. And everybody have a wonderful, happy holiday. Bye-bye.